Hello, folks. So, we have had some technical difficulties on our end. I spent a long time recording a video yesterday and then found out that, in fact, I didn't record anything. So, we're going to try it again. So, I'm doing a 30-second test right now, and then when we're done, I'm going to save it and we'll see what happens. Hopefully, it all just works. So, I will see you later. All right, let's see if we have it right this time. So I suppose you see that I'm kind of down low here. So one of the things that I was going to show off today was the fact that I have to sit on the equivalent of a telephone book because I short. So this thing is actually called the Big Book. It's really big. This is what I sit on so you can see me. Everybody in my house thinks it's hysterical. Well, bully on them. At least y'all can see me, right? That's what matters. All right, so in theory, this should now be recording and sending out. Yay, team! So I have a video to share with you today. As the opening placard suggested, we're going to talk about how to make a medieval tunic. We're going to do this as part one, and there will be at least two parts, probably three, because I'll probably deal with hemming and finishing as a separate video. But we're going to talk about cutting out the pieces and the actual neckline. So the pieces are, you have 4 gussets, which are the little parts that go under the arm. There are 4 gores, which are the pieces that make it fuller in the waist and knee area so that you can walk and ride a horse and all the rest of that. There's the body, and then there's the sleeves. And they're put together in a particular way, and the method that a lot of places online show you really left me being very frustrated and upset because I didn't understand what they were trying to say. I am not a fantastic seamstress, okay? I used to break out in a cold sweat anytime I had to even so much as uncork the box in which the sewing machine sat, never mind actually thread the thing and run it. Since that time, I've actually worn out a sewing machine and have gotten a new one, so I've learned. If I can learn, anybody can learn, trust me. In all of my life, I have only ever failed one course, and that course was home ec because of sewing. I'm ashamed, but it's true. So, if you struggle with sewing, you can do this. This is the simplest thing. You may remember last week I told you, or earlier in this week I told you to look up the Elizabethan smock generator. That will help you generate the pattern that you need in order to cut the pieces out. And once you have those pieces cut out, you can join in with this video. I'm only going to take you through the sewing of the neckline simply because the neckline is the most frustrating piece in my strong opinion. And if you do that first, it's done. You're completely done and you don't have to worry about it. Everything after that is basically straight lines or a variation on straight lines. And I gotta say, sometimes if you do deal with the frustrating parts early on, then when it comes time to do the other parts, it doesn't feel so bad. So that's what I'm hoping for, and that's what we're gonna do. So we'll see what happens. I have a video to share with you, which includes about 10 or 12 minutes of me badly recording my stuff. Please don't page me to tell me I need a tripod. I'm very aware that I need a tripod. So, yeah. So you can see my lovely pots of stew there. That was from the Blacksmith Festival last September. So here we have my lovely sewing area for the day. We have the 4 gussets. Those are the underarm pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have the 4 gores. Those are the side pieces. We have the 2 sleeves, which are folded in half at the moment. 2. And we have 1 body, which is folded in half. And that's important, which I'll explain in a moment. And there's the sewing machine. Dum, dum, dum. All right, the first thing you need to do with every single piece before you apply a single piece of thread to it or even a pin is you need to iron it. Please excuse the fact that I was trying to do this with one hand while I was filming with the other, and I filmed at the wrong ratio and I'm frustrated, and yeah, but you know what, you have a video, so bite me. Anyway, you're going to iron each of the pieces and make sure they're nice and flat. If you do this, you will be much happier. If you don't do this, you might be an experienced seamstress, and that's fine, but I still suggest you do it. This is the body piece, and I have ironed it completely in out flat, and then I fold it in half, and I'm creasing the center of it, and that will become obvious in just a minute. But it is a necessary step. You want to put a good heavy crease in that. So right here is the middle of that fabric, and we're going to cut the neck hole out, right like that. So here's the body piece with that center crease, and I folded it in half to find the exact center of the piece of fabric. Here's my handy dandy neck hole creator, which you see has a bigger piece at the front than at the back. That's because of how our shoulders work. But it has a center that's very carefully drafted, and that center is going to go into that center piece that we found by folding the fabric in half and in half again, which is right there. So you put the center of your pattern down so that it matches with the center of your fabric. Fold it down, make sure it's nice and flat and there's no wrinkles under there, and then scurry off to the side and get the chalk that you forgot to pick up before the film. There it is. And you're going to chalk around. Don't try and cut around this. Believe me, you can skip that on others. Chalk it. As you can see, I have beautifully chalked out on my stuff. I just use sidewalk chalk, by the way. And you'll see I've also chalked out a slit. That is what I use to make heads be able to fit through. Here I have cut out my lovely neck piece, and I have cut my slit. I use that neck hole for most adults. I have a separate one for kids. So, doing a neckline is the fussiest, prissiest piece of work that you will do. I use dressmaker's pins and the padded top of my ironing board, which is a tabletop tiny one, and this is how I go about doing it. And if you have trouble with necklines, which I think most people do at least when they're beginning, this method is time consuming, but you will end up with a nearly perfect and very beautiful neckline. Because you are fixing any errors before you ever put a stitch into it, what happens is if you make a mistake, you iron it out, iron it flat, and redo it. You only do the stitching once you have the entire thing done. So here you can see I've pinned all the way around, and I'm taking my iron, and oh, you see how I folded over in the wrong direction there? That's the bad thing. So I was going to take this out of the video, but I left it in because you guys need to see that errors happen. So I have taken the dress pins out. I am carefully folding back into place, and if you gibble it up enough, you may have to re-iron it flat and then fold it. I didn't have to because I was doing it, but you'll note I added an extra pin to hold it flat. Perfectly okay. You can iron right over top of those pins carefully. Don't, like go bang, 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 but you'll note I'm mostly pressing down and pulling gently in the direction that I want the fold to go. I'm also making sure that there's no bunching. I'm checking my work as I go. I'm letting a lot of steam go. This is a brushed cotton, so I have it at the highest heat setting. You should use whatever setting your fabric calls for. See how nice and flat that is? And note, I have done nothing with the slit yet. Don't worry about it. Me waving, that's cooling it down, because you don't want to touch those pins while they're still hot, because otherwise you will end up with brands. No, I'm not explaining to you why I know that. Shush, stop laughing at me. So you'll see I'm folding it down a second time, and what this is doing is it is putting the raw edge underneath where it cannot fray. This is called technically a rolled hem or a rolled neckline. You can do it at the edges of your sleeves and at the bottom of your tunic as well. it's just a lot more finicky on the round neckline. Now you can get around that by doing a square neckline, but that has its own issues, so much so that I hate doing them. I'd rather do a round neckline. If you are using cotton or linen, this actually will work fairly fine because as you're folding, the fabric itself will move, and because it's cut round, and so it kind of stretches a little bit. And as long as you iron it down nice and tight, away you go. It does take a little bit of effort to work at this, but it's totally worth it. Don't be afraid to use pins. You're not going to run out. See my tomato? It's zillions of pins in there. Now you see how it's starting to bunch up a little bit there? As you work your way around, that'll happen. Just flatten it out as you go. It might take pinning and repinning it a couple of times. It's okay. Take your time. There's no rush, and there's no finishing it. You're going to pin all the way around with that second fold and iron it. And here is the finished piece with the second fold. No raw edges are now visible, and this means that the garment will not fray at the neckline, and it should stay with a fairly solid neckline. It should sit nicely, especially with cotton and linen. By the time you've ironed it twice and then sewn it down, it makes it a little bit more rigid, and what you end up with is a very nicely patterned, nicely sitting neckline. Be careful when you're taking all the pins out, of course. Don't poke yourself. If you notice any of your pins are not poking well into fabric or your tomato, stick it into the strawberry. The strawberry is filled with a type of graphite that helps sharpen your pins up, and that lets you use them for a longer period of time. Double check that there are no pins left in, and voila, the finished neckline. Ah, the sewing machine. So you're going to put your neckline in so that it's sitting right like this. You're going to sew from the slit all the way around to the other side. And I futz around with this for a few moments, and I left it all in the film because I want you to see how much work I was putting in. Now I have a camera in front of me in this, which is why it's wobbling, because I keep trying to see past it, and it was not a good choice, but it was what I could do and still show you guys what I was doing. So I apologize for the back and forth motion, but I'm going back and forth to try and find the right spot to go down, because I want it fairly close to the edge of that fold, but not so far that it goes off. Once I reach it, down goes the presser foot to hold it in place. I'm going to go forward about 4 stitches and then reach up and go back 4 stitches and then just continue on my merry way straight along. Now if you watch carefully, I'm going around the curve here, and I'm not paying attention because I'm dealing with stuff, and I went right off the edge of the rolled fabric. So I just went back 3 stitches and repositioned, and away I go. I can start going right away again. Now you'll see how I have more of a curve here than I can deal with. I've made sure that my needle is all the way down, lifted the presser foot, turned the fabric, put the presser foot down. That allows me to turn it, no problem. The needle needs to be all the way in, as I just pointed out, before you move the fabric. That means that when you start sewing, it will be in exactly the same place and you won't have any loose threads. And I actually stopped recording here because I kept having problems getting it to sit straight. And it might take you some time. You're just going to do what you need to do. And you can see here the finished neckline minus the slit. It's nice. It's even. Now there's the little mistake that I made, and you can see it on the film there. I zigzagged it back so that I could get back onto the fabric. Nobody's going to notice that piece on your neckline. The first pieces of garb that I made were full of things like that, and a lot of curse words, and not a small amount of blood. And when you finish off, you do the same thing. You go near to the end, you back up 4 stitches, and then continue on. So here I have folded back the pieces around the slit twice so that the raw edge is under. But of course that bottom part is going to be vulnerable. So you can see it's pinned in place, and I pressed it with the pins in, but I take the pins out before sewing. You do not want to get your sewing machine stuck on a pin, trust me. And here you can see I have sewn it down. It's held firmly in place, nice and even. And at the bottom, I've gone back and forth about 10 times. And what this does is it actually provides a stopping place if the fabric rips a little bit because the person wearing it yanks it off over their head at a rapid pace or takes it off while drunk. That will stop the rip from going any further and keep it from fraying. You'll see how nice those edges are. It has a nice curve to it. It sits nicely, and it's small enough that they can be pinned if somebody wants to do so. And that takes us to the end of the neckline. So you might say to yourself, well, I don't know if I can do this. You can, okay? Every single one of you can. If I can, anybody can. Believe me. I don't get cold sweats at all when I'm sewing anymore. If I'm not trying to hold a camera and narrate at the same time, I can whip off 2 or 3 of those tunics in an afternoon, including all the cutting out of the pieces. It's only taking me longer because I'm actually attempting to make a video for you guys. But some of those first pieces I made out of dead bed sheets and things I found at the Dollar General or things that I got at the swap shop at the dump, I mean, they were frankly pretty horrid. But you know what? They're still amazing when I think of where I came from. I may not wear those pieces anymore, or not usually. Some of them I still wear when I'm camping, and I'll wear them like for when I'm doing setup or tear down. But I keep those pieces in a box. And when I feel bad about something that I'm sewing, I pull them out and I look at them and I go, look how far you have come, girl. It's okay. I mean, the very first sideless surcoat I made was half inside out. I sewed half the dress inside out, but I was due at an event like some 2 hours later, and I just said heck with it and threw it in, and I wore it anyway. It eventually became the thing I wore while I was cooking bacon so that I didn't get grease spatters on my dress. And these days I don't even wear it for that. I mean, literally it's put away in a box, and part of me wants to burn it because it's so bad. But you know what? It shows my growth, and sometimes you need to be able to go back and look and see where you've come from. So do that. And as you get better, okay, I now have pieces of my garb that I made for my kids that they've outgrown that's ended up in gold key and that are favorite pieces of people who take their kids to Burqa. Okay? I'm like blown away that somebody would actually go and go, is that purple dress still here? Can we use that for our youngest this year? Wow, okay. I guess I did okay then. So the next video is going to talk about how we sew the rest of the tunic together. We'll be putting the sleeves on and putting the gores on, and then we will sew the sides together. And I do it in a particular method. I put the sleeves on first, and then I put the gores on, and only at that point do I then sew the sides together. And the reason for that is this. Once you have all of it together except those sides sewn, you can drape it over your victim, the person that you're making the garb for, and you can see if it's going to fit. And if by some freak of nature you have measured incorrectly and they don't fit in it and it's too small, you still have the opportunity to add in a panel. So you can actually add a strip in to make it bigger. You can rescue it. Yes, you can. And it's perfectly period. Piecing things is period. It really is. If it turns out that it's way too big, there are things you can do to help cut it down in size as well, and I'll talk about that at that time. And I think I'll probably do the hemming as a third video because it's a finicky thing, and I actually like doing it by hand. The pieces that people are going to see most are your neckline, the sleeves, the ends of your sleeves, the hems on your sleeves, and the bottom piece. They don't look at the underarm gussets, they don't look at your gores. I mean, some of the people who do really fancy sewing might look at your gores just so that they can see how neatly the corner fits in. And by the way, if you do it my way, they will fit perfect every time. Just saying. But yeah, nobody's going to look at that stuff, and nobody's going to care if it's off, because it so frequently is. And certainly in period extant pieces that we have, there are plenty of mistakes. Everybody screws up, and you wore it anyway. That's period. But what I'll do is go over how you do that hand sewing in different ways. So everything you saw in today's video can be done by hand. Just replace the machine with doing straight up and down stitch, or you can, if you know other stitches, you can use them. But honestly, I just do up and down, up and down, up and down all the way around, and it means that your stitches will show through on the other side just like they do when you're machine sewing. So you can either use a same color thread or a contrasting color thread. Now I used green thread on this one, partly because I was making masks earlier in the week, and so I had green threaded in the machine already, and partly because I think green and gray go together rather nicely, and I have some green trim that I will probably put on this tunic for my kid later. But at the end of all this, you will get to see a human being wearing the tunic, and you'll get to see the finished product. And that's all going to be machine sewed, except for possibly the sleeve hems, because I'll do those by hand just so that I can show you how they're done. All right, that's where we're at today. We've been on for 21 minutes. My goodness, I talk a lot, huh? Anyway, it was good to see you guys. I hope this was helpful, and don't be afraid to share the videos around. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week, and hopefully we'll get that video stuff set up.